Welcome to Second Sunrise Stories. Relax and enjoy our captivating tales. If you love what you hear, please like, comment, and subscribe to help us bring you more incredible stories. After I died, I finally learned the truth. Victor Hayes' love letter wasn't meant for me. That's why after we were both reborn, Victor quickly asked for the letter back, and I also avoided contact with him. But when I started working with others to set him up with his first love, Victor, who had always been cold to me, suddenly lost all reason and control. He grabbed my hand tightly, his eyes full of determination, his voice stern. "Emma Parker, we are clearly married. Who are you trying to push me to?" I should have scolded him, but a voice kept buzzing in my ear, disturbing me. "Emma, that fat kid Miller from next class is bullying Victor again. This time he even went so far as to dump all his books out." But that wasn't the main point. The main point was that hidden in Victor's backpack was a love letter. As soon as I opened my eyes, a light blue envelope hit me right in the face. I was a bit dazed, my mind like cotton candy. Victor, who once dominated the business world, was being bullied. And what's more, a love letter. "What's that about?" Was I stunned with joy. Lucas Miller's still, youthful face suddenly came close, looking suspicious. "You already knew Victor Hayes' love letter was for you, so you're this dazed with happiness, right?" After speaking, he clicked his tongue in annoyance. But something wasn't right. My relationship with Lucas had been distant for a long time. When we met, he only coldly called me Miss Parker. Because I had helped Victor grab the land he had his eye on first, making Lucas angry, calling me a traitor who bites the hand that feeds. And this love letter. My eyes lingered on the strangely familiar love letter before me. After a long moment, I spoke hoarsely. "It's not for me." "How can it not be for you?" Lucas flipped through the love letter back and forth, then confidently pointed to the top of the envelope. "Look here, E. Parker. If not you, then who? I didn't expect you two to have feelings for each other. Fine then, from now on I won't tease you about your one-sided crush anymore." Lucas pouted, then he gently patted my head with emotion. Finally, this kid gets her feelings returned after all that suffering. I quietly listened, feeling a stinging sensation at the corners of my eyes. Everything was happening exactly like in my previous life. Because of this abbreviation, everyone thought Victor's love letter was for me, including myself. Plus, he always took care of me, so even though Victor grew colder to me later, I stubbornly thought that was just his personality, that he just didn't want to admit he liked me. But the truth was, Victor was just repaying my family for helping him, even silently sacrificing his own marriage for it. "It's not for me. He doesn't like me either." I lowered my head, my voice somewhat gloomy. "You know, Lucas, give that back to me." A hurried voice suddenly rang out, accompanied by heavy breathing from running. It was Victor who had just arrived. I didn't expect to meet Victor so soon after being reborn. His gaze fell on that light blue love letter. When he discovered the letter had been opened, Victor pressed his lips tightly together, his brows immediately furrowing. Finally, he spoke stiffly. "Lucas, this is mine. You shouldn't open it without permission." His cold voice, each word as if trying to suppress anger. When saying this, Victor avoided my gaze, something that had never happened in my previous life. Thinking of the strange things happening to me, I vaguely had a suspicion. Lucas had never gotten along with Victor. With his hot temper, he immediately mocked. "Hey, I was being nice helping you deliver it, and you don't thank me but put on this face for who to see." After speaking, he turned to look at me with a pained expression. "Emma, if it doesn't work out, let's find someone else. I have plenty of brothers here, not inferior to this Hayes kid at all. If one doesn't work, choosing several at once is fine too." Lucas often joked around, never watching his words. I listened absently without paying attention, just nodding while only thinking about what I should do now that Victor had also been reborn. I completely didn't notice Victor frowning even more tightly when looking at me. "Emma, I haven't read it yet." I took a deep breath, resealed the love letter in Lucas's hand, then gave it to Victor, trying to maintain a normal tone. "If it's yours, it should be returned to its owner." When I said I hadn't read it yet, the tension in Victor's face eased slightly. That's why I was almost certain Victor had also been reborn. There were still wounds on his face, probably from rushing over to stop me from reading this love letter and getting into a fight with someone. After all, in my previous life, Victor wasn't injured. My hand unconsciously gripped the letter tightly. I looked at the bruises on his face, and a sentence escaped my mouth. Victor, is this love letter really not for me? In my previous life, I assumed it was for me, so I happily kept that love letter, eagerly waiting for Victor to confess to me himself. But until we were together, Victor never once said, "I like you." Finally, I brought out this letter in frustration. At that time, Victor stared at the letter for a long time, but he didn't explain anything. He just lowered his head to kiss me lightly, then asked what I wanted to eat for dinner so he could cook. I was easily appeased, then comforted myself that it was fine if Victor didn't say it out loud. After all, I could keep telling him. Until now, Victor paused while holding the envelope, his fingers unconsciously stroking the edge, a sign that Victor was being cautious. He suddenly looked up, his dark eyes looking at me with a bit of scrutiny that was hard to detect. I unconsciously tensed up, both hoping Victor could guess I had also been reborn, yet hoping he couldn't. But he quickly withdrew his gaze. The love letter had returned to its owner's hands. Victor lowered his head and softly said, then coldly said, "It's not for you." Although I had already guessed the answer, when I heard Victor say it himself, I still couldn't help but be stunned. To say I wasn't sad would be a lie. Plus, in my previous life, I had liked Victor for 16 years. I had tried my best to follow in his footsteps, always thinking that if I tried a little harder, maybe Victor would like me a bit more. And that love letter was my motivation to persist. Actually, Victor always treated me very well. After marriage, he always kept himself clean. No matter how busy he was each day, he would make time to eat with me. He was the perfect husband in everyone's eyes, except for not liking me. Oh, I thought it was for me. Happy for nothing. My eyes grew increasingly sore. I tried to blink, learning to speak like before, then turned to call Lucas. "Let's go. I haven't finished my homework yet." Lucas muttered curses. He glared at Victor, then said irritably, "Fine, I'll go back and call someone for you right away. If that doesn't work, I'll personally take action and help you with your homework while I'm at it." Thinking of Lucas's academic performance, which wasn't any better than mine, I laughed and was about to speak when I suddenly heard Victor call me Emma. He slightly frowned, his expression hard to read. "This isn't a love letter, it's just—" His words suddenly stopped. I followed his gaze and happened to see Luna Stevens laughing and chatting happily with classmates passing by. In my previous life, I had never paid attention to Luna because I only cared about Victor, and she had no connection with Victor at school. They were like two complete strangers. Just like now, when she saw me and Victor together, the smile on Luna's face froze, then she quickly turned away as if not noticing the situation here. Victor also quickly withdrew his gaze, his face maintaining its usual coldness, but his hand unconsciously gripped the love letter tighter. I understood and suddenly remembered what happened in my previous life. Luna appeared in the second month after I died. At that time, although I had died, somehow I still stayed by Victor's side as a spirit. I always thought Victor really hated Luna. He wouldn't hesitate to throw away the food Luna had carefully prepared, and would coldly tell her to leave when she came to remind him to take care of his health. I even smugly thought that although Victor didn't say it, he actually loved me very much. After I died, he remained chaste. Even an excellent woman like Luna was immediately rejected by him. Until the earthquake happened, I witnessed firsthand Victor, who was always cold, panicking for the first time as he rushed toward Luna. He shielded her with his body. He seemed to even call Luna's name. But the noise was too loud then, I couldn't hear clearly. When the rescue team arrived, they had to use considerable effort to pull the unconscious Victor out. Luna was only slightly injured. All I could see was Victor's blood. He had his eyes closed, breathing weakly as he was put in the ambulance. Luna gripped his hand tightly, crying, "Victor, I've been good and given you to Emma for so many years. Are you going to abandon me now?" I was stunned, about to get in the ambulance. At that time, I didn't understand what Luna meant. Victor, in his delirium, reacted. The emergency doctor told Luna to keep talking to stimulate Victor's will to survive. Luna said many things through her tears, mostly about events from over 20 years ago, when I hadn't met Victor yet. Oh, so they had been in love for many years. It was only then that I learned that the love letter was originally for Luna, but I had taken it. I quietly listened, my gaze unconsciously stopping on Victor, then suddenly couldn't remember, when the car accident happened, did Victor rush to protect me like he protected Luna today? No, it seemed not. Before getting in the car, we had argued. I don't remember why we argued, but during that period we argued quite frequently, though it was always me one-sidedly yelling at Victor. I was very angry, so after getting in the car, I distanced myself from him a bit. But that didn't affect how, when the accident happened, I didn't hesitate to rush toward Victor and shield him. Victor must have been scared then. He held me tightly, his hands still trembling. That's why for over a month, I had mocked him several times. I always thought that dying and staying by Victor's side as a spirit was an opportunity for me to realize that Victor truly liked me. But from then on, I thought Victor probably hated me. When Luna passed by, the two of them still had no eye contact or communication. I came back to my senses and looked at Victor with a teasing expressions. The name Luna Stevens also has the initial L, doesn't it? Do you need my help? My tone was playful with a bit of mischievous curiosity. Victor had never liked this frivolous side of me. Sure enough, he frowned, his voice growing colder. This has nothing to do with Luna. This isn't a love letter either, just a normal thank you letter. Perhaps worried I would do something harmful to Luna, there was a hint of displeasure in Victor's voice. So I just said, oh. But couldn't help thinking that I had memorized the content of that love letter. No matter how tactful, it couldn't be turned into a thank you letter. It seemed Victor had now learned to lie to protect Luna. I didn't continue to dwell on this issue, pulling Lucas away. But after just a few steps, I suddenly remembered something and turned back. Victor, this Sunday I have something to do. You don't need to come to my house to tutor me anymore. My father had sponsored Victor's education, and he had offered to tutor me weekly. But now that we both intended to correct the mistakes of our previous life, I thought it best to reduce contact with Victor. I thought to myself. Victor's gaze briefly swept over my hand holding Lucas's hand, with something in his eyes that I couldn't understand, as well as a bit of frustration. After a long while, he turned his head and two words came out from his throat, deep and cold, as you wish. I asked Lucas if he knew any tutors. Having been away from school for so long, the knowledge I had learned before was almost all returned to the teachers. Lucas suspected I had a fever. He was surprised. Don't you already have Victor? You even used to show off to me about it. I choked, finally lowering my eyes to look at the test paper in front of me, laughing dryly. Forget it, he doesn't like me anyway. From now on, I should bother people less. Beyond expectations, when I said these words of giving up, I felt much easier than imagined. Stopping liking Victor was indeed difficult, but it would gradually change. Lucas didn't believe it. He insisted that I was just throwing a tantrum, and in a moment I would run back to Victor's side. I turned my back on him and pulled Lucas, who was about to skip class, to sit down and do homework together. We really were a good match, truly a pair of poor students. I sighed and finally gritted my teeth to go see my father about changing tutors. My father looked up at me, slightly frowning. Your grades have improved, proving that young Hayes's tutoring is effective. You were the one who insisted on having him tutor you before, and now you want to find someone else. Give me a convincing reason. For him, effectiveness and results were most important. I said that I was about to enter 12th grade and didn't want to affect Victor. Does young Hayes think the same? My father asked. I hesitated. Yes. He lowered his head, his voice somewhat annoyed. You just need to treat young Hayes as an excellent tutor. As for any other issues, examine yourself. I'm still busy. If there's nothing else, don't bother me anymore. My father was always like this. I was used to it. I don't know what he said, but that evening I received a call from Victor. The other end was silent for a long while. I was also a bit dazed. Suddenly I couldn't remember when was the last time Victor had called me first. It was always me seeking him out first. Even when we were angry at each other, I was always the first to send signals wanting to make peace. In our conversations, most were photos I sent. Every day I eagerly told Victor about what had happened, what I had seen, while he only coldly replied with one sentence. I know. Such a life had lasted for many years. The physics test needs to be completed. Last week's quiz should also be prepared. If there are any questions you don't understand, mark them and I'll explain tomorrow. His voice sounded much younger than in my memory. I came to my senses and blurted out, I don't need your tutoring anymore. But Victor seemed not to hear, continuing, Mr. Parker said the tutoring is showing results. He suggested increasing the frequency from once a week to twice, and will pay me accordingly. I've agreed. His voice was extremely calm, but it made me feel an inexplicable anger rising within. I suppressed my anger, speaking word by word. I said, I don't need your tutoring anymore. I've found another teacher already. Another silence, longer this time. The quiet lasted so long I began to regret not keeping my composure. Victor spoke again. Based on this afternoon's conversation with Mr. Parker, it seems you haven't found a suitable tutor yet. Is there a problem with my teaching method, or are you not used to this intensity? But I think with your current grades, this intensity is necessary. Again like this, a deep feeling of helplessness suddenly rose within me. I gripped the phone tightly, only feeling vaguely that my father was the same, Victor was the same. They were always terrifyingly rational and calm. They succeeded in controlling all emotions and always made me feel that to them, I was just an unimportant presence. That's not it. I suddenly didn't want to hear Victor's voice anymore, slightly curling my lips. At least this weekend you don't need to come. I have things to do. This time Victor said nothing more. He still responded as always, all right, I understand. That's it, he never asked another question. This week I had nothing else to do, but I didn't want to see Victor and didn't want to stay home either. Lucas saw I seemed off and insisted on taking me out to relax. In the end, I led him to the bookstore and bought a pile of recent test papers. Are we crazy? Lucas panicked, raising his hand to touch my forehead. Victor's not even here. Why are you acting so studious? Can't I want to study seriously? I irritably pushed his hand away. It has nothing to do with Victor. I just don't want to stay like this forever, unable to do anything. I paused, then said softly, I also want to have more choices. In my previous life, I fell just short of my dream school. Actually, liking Victor wasn't entirely bad. At least I once worked very hard for him to become better. Fresh flowers and praise really do easily captivate people. Lucas looked at me with complicated eyes. He said, this child is really overstimulated, but quietly took another test set. He even said seriously, originally every test I had you as a companion. If you suddenly rank first in class while I'm still at the bottom, my old man definitely won't let me off. Hearing this, I nodded, then under Lucas's astonished gaze, I handed him several more test sets, making him so angry he fought to grab my hot pot skewers afterward. I blocked with difficulty and barely managed to tilt my head back to eat a piece of radish. Finally, a familiar voice suddenly rang out from behind, carrying some hard to red emotion. Is this the thing you said you had to do this weekend? The radish immediately got stuck. I choked so badly I couldn't speak. This idiot Lucas eagerly prepared to throw away the test papers in his hand, ready to perform the Heimlich maneuver on me, but someone else was quicker. A hand with clear joints gently patted my back. Victor looked down at me, a smile briefly appearing in his eyes. He said softly, no one's competing with you. After I calmed down, I quickly avoided Lucas's hand and thanked him. My hand suddenly stiffened, my gaze sweeping over me and Lucas. Victor pressed his lips together without speaking. Finally, the girl with Victor broke the silence. Have you guys bought the new test papers? Lucas somehow had a dark face and didn't speak. So I nodded, that's great then. The girl pushed up her glasses and smiled at me. Nancy and I arrived too late. The next batch won't come until next week. Can I borrow your test papers to photocopy? Before I could say anything, Lucas beside me unconsciously handed out the test papers in his hand. Damn it. Lucas also cursed quietly, gritting his teeth and lowering his voice. This damn reflex. Thank you. The girl smiled more brightly and added meaningfully. Luca. Feeling something was off. Hearing this name I suddenly realized why she looked familiar. Wasn't this Nancy Chen, the extremely capable secretary who later had rumored romantic involvement with Lucas? Thinking of future events, my gaze looking at these two was full of curiosity. While Lucas was bickering with Nancy, more accurately, Lucas was being teased by his classmate to the point of jumping up. I watched with interest, completely not noticing Victor standing silently beside me, until he suddenly called me, Emma. I reflexively turned back, meeting his somewhat heavy gaze. So I pulled at the corner of my mouth, maintaining a cold attitude. Classmate Hayes, what is it? But Victor said no more words. I also didn't care much, withdrawing my gaze boredly, then quietly walking faster, just wanting to stay away from him a bit. This is the first time we've met since that incident. My footsteps paused. I suddenly understood. Victor was probably talking about this being the first time we'd met since the love letter incident. We weren't in the same class or even on the same floor. Before, when I liked Victor, I always made time to run to his class, or found ways to know his class and meal times, waiting at the door for a long time, then choosing exactly when he arrived at school to suddenly appear, just to smile and say, "Good morning, Victor." All those chance encounters were actually the result of my careful planning. But avoiding him required no effort at all. So what? I smiled indifferently. I don't remember anymore. Victor pressed his lips together, his beautiful brows briefly showing some frustration, but it quickly disappeared. He suddenly said softly, "Is it because of that thank you letter?" "What? You suddenly refused my tutoring." Victor calmly analyzed. "Before, when I tutored you, you never refused. You even absorbed it very well. But since then..." He paused, his voice also lowering. "You seem to always avoid me. You're overthinking it." I didn't look at him, quickly saying, "I've just been busy studying lately. We're not in the same class, not seeing each other is very normal. I'm not refusing your help with revision either. It's just that we're about to enter 12th grade. I can't keep bothering an excellent student like you. If I accidentally affect your college entrance exam, I'll become a sinner for eternity." I tried to joke to lighten the atmosphere. I don't know what happened ahead. Those two suddenly sped up. Seeing the distance widening, I reflexively wanted to catch up, but my arm was grabbed tightly. I turned back confused, meeting deep black eyes filled with indescribable frustration. Victor said, "I dreamed I received that thank you letter. I misunderstood it as a love letter you sent me. But you never asked me about it. From then on, you became stranger, starting to boldly revolve around me, starting to boldly interfere with some of my habits. For example, not letting me study late until 2 or 3 am, or not letting me skip 3 meals a day, forcing me to eat the nutritious meals you brought. The result was you yourself studied to the point of forgetting to eat and sleep to test into the same university as me, even fainting in class. Your life seemed to only revolve around me, but your ideal university originally wasn't Capital University." Victor looked at me, slightly frowning. "I don't want you to change yourself because of me. Moreover, from the beginning it was just a misunderstanding." I listened somewhat hazily. But the strange feeling from before suddenly had a reasonable explanation. I originally thought Victor had also been reborn like me. Turns out he just dreamed of some things from the previous life. I don't know when Lucas and Nancy were no longer nearby. Around us were only a few passersby. I slightly raised my head to look at Victor, just feeling the sunlight overhead was still as glaring as before. "Victor." I called him, somewhat curious. "Do you really dislike the things I did in that dream?" He used the word strange to describe it. Actually, that wasn't a dream. All those things really happened. I thought Victor also liked me, so I relied on that feeling to go from chasing after him to gradually forcing my way into his life, leaving my mark. It was my first time learning to love someone so intensely and without hesitation. No one had ever taught me how to love someone, so I only knew to single-mindedly do things I thought would be good for the other person. So I never knew that my love could also become a burden for others. No. Victor turned his face away, the area behind his ears gradually reddening. He pressed his lips together then spoke, "I'm just not used to it." I didn't notice Victor's difference but felt calmer inside. So I seriously apologized. "I'm sorry. I apologize for the actions that bothered you, and also apologize for my misunderstanding that caused you and the person you like be separated for so long. Fortunately, the mistake hasn't happened yet, it can still be salvaged." I let out a breath, suddenly feeling everything seemed to stabilize again. Although I was still sad, although every time I thought of Victor my heart still ached with some unwillingness, fortunately I already knew which path I should take. In my previous life, I once thought Victor was my light. But when I knew that was light I had accidentally stolen, that light immediately became a burning fire scorching me. I smiled at Victor, my eyes calm. "Sorry. From now on I won't bother you anymore." But Victor's body suddenly stiffened. He looked at me almost flustered, as if needing a lot of time to digest what I had just said. The hand gripping my arm unconsciously tightened, his voice hoarse. "That was just a dream." "What are you saying? Emma, what are you guys doing standing there?" Lucas's boisterous voice cut off Victor's words. Almost immediately, Victor's hand gripping me was unceremoniously knocked away by Lucas. Lucas didn't even glance at him. I just discovered a small wonton shop next to the photocopy place. Don't you like wontons the most? Come on, I'll treat you. He pushed me forward. I helplessly walked a distance, then turned back to see Victor still standing there, his gaze following me, carrying a loneliness and desolation that couldn't be put into words. But I quickly withdrew my gaze. Whether it was a love letter or thank you letter, I had a feeling Victor was still hiding some things from me. But those things were no longer important now. Now that I'd been reborn, I should live for myself once. Lucas said if I didn't want Victor to tutor me anymore, I could only quickly improve my own grades. That way I could prove I truly didn't need Victor. I originally planned to do that, but having been away from school too long, I had forgotten many things, so my improvement progress wasn't very promising. Need help? Nancy suddenly spoke up. She pushed up her glasses and smiled. After all, I often help classmate Lucas with questions. If classmate Parker has anything unclear, you can also find me. I hesitated a bit, but Lucas loudly agreed for me. She ranks second in the whole grade, only a few points behind that Victor kid. Plus, he leaned close to my ear and whispered, "You've already experienced your brother. This girl explains things even clearer than our old physics teacher. At least I can understand." In that moment, my gaze looking at Nancy couldn't help but carry some admiration. Being able to make Lucas understand problems, this really wasn't easy. Nancy just smiled, hiding her merit and fame. This matter was temporarily decided like this. As for Victor, he still kept his weekly tutoring appointments with me as scheduled. But this time I no longer used studying to get close to Victor like before. He was already quiet, and now that I wasn't bothering him to talk, besides solving problems, there was only silence between us. I didn't initiate conversation, and he didn't know what to say. But fortunately, this was exactly what I wanted. Thanks to the foundation from my previous life, I quickly got on the right track. My scores on small tests gradually improved. Lucas worried to the point of cursing, then turned around to find tests and began writing frantically. High school life was boring and monotonous. I got used to doing practice problems every day to consolidate knowledge, then finding Nancy to borrow notes and ask questions. So when Luna actively came to find me, I was a bit surprised. "What is it?" Luna came during lunch break when no one was in class. She looked at me, then glanced at the detailed notes on my desk. Understanding flashed in her eyes. "Classmate Parker." Luna took a deep breath, her face serious. "I hope you can bother Victor less in the future." Victor. Victor Hayes. I hadn't reacted yet when I heard Luna continue. "You two aren't from the same world. Your Parker family is very rich, so no matter how poor your grades are, you'll have someone backing you in the future. But Victor is different. If he can't test into a good university, he really has no future at all." When speaking emotionally, Luna's voice began to choke up. From her words, I learned many things I only found out after marrying Victor in my previous life. Victor escaped from gambling addict loan sharks to go to school. Thanks to my family's support, his life became a bit easier. But what I didn't expect was that Luna had been Victor's neighbor since childhood, and their relationship was very good. Victor often helped Luna study, and she often borrowed his notes. It was just to avoid gossip that they pretended not to be close at school. "No, that's not right. I seem to know this already." I frowned, then gently patted my forehead. It felt like I had forgotten something important. "Victor actively offered to tutor you, because he's grateful for your father's help. But you shouldn't take advantage of that to interfere with his studies. Because of you, he's lost focus in class many times." Victor losing focus in class, that was indeed rare. But hearing Luna's obviously mocking tone, I laughed in anger. "Shouldn't you say these words to Victor? After all, he's the one losing focus in class, and I've been studying very hard recently with significant grade improvements." "But Luna, before standing on the moral high ground criticizing me, shouldn't you investigate a bit? For example, I haven't actively sought out Victor for a long time, so there's no interference like you said." "You're lying," Luna quickly retorted, pointing at my notebook and saying, "You're still borrowing notes from Victor. How is that not?" I sighed, picked up the notebook and showed Luna the name on it. "But I think classmate Chen would be very happy to know her notes were mistaken for those of the top student in the grade." Luna was stunned, unable to speak. But this reminded me of something. Luna had lied to me. At least she wasn't familiar with Victor's notes. But to avoid trouble, Before class started, I still briefly summarized the situation, then gently reminded. I think classmate Stevens has some misunderstanding about me. It's better if classmate Hayes explains clearly himself. Victor was silent for a moment, but he only replied with a completely unrelated sentence. I've only ever tutored you. I was stunned for a moment, then saw Victor take my just completed test. He scanned line by line, his lips pressed tightly into a straight line. When he lowered his head, a few soft strands of hair fell on his forehead. His thick, long eyelashes trembled slightly. I always knew Victor was very handsome, especially when he concentrated. I used to joke that Victor was a beautiful man. Victor didn't respond. He just tightened his arms around my waist more, the movement getting stronger. At that time I thought Victor actually liked me, but that was just what I thought. I came to my senses, about to look away when Victor suddenly spoke up. Looking up at me, his voice carried some hard, to red emotion. You've improved very quickly recently. He looked up at me, his voice carrying some hard, to red emotion. Is it because you don't want me to continue tutoring you? This look was very familiar. The first time I went to Victor's class to find Nancy instead of him. Victor had looked at me with such silent eyes. In those pure black eyes was hidden a bit of disappointment, like a small dog wet from rain under the eaves, carrying an indescribable grievance, letting out soft whimpers from its throat. I paused, then suddenly laughed at this thought. Please? This was Victor Hayes. The Victor Hayes who was always calm and composed, who wouldn't waver even facing bankruptcy the next second. How could he be swayed by emotions? Moreover, there were no feelings between us. Right? I lowered my head to pull out a new test, not looking up. I'm only doing this for myself. Victor said nothing more. After a long while, he spoke softly. Recently I've been having many dreams. But when Victor said this, his voice was too quiet and I was concentrating on the problems, completely not paying attention. But even if I had heard, I probably wouldn't have cared. I didn't know if Victor went to Luna afterward, but from that day on, Luna no longer pretended to be completely unacquainted with Victor. Gradually everyone began to know that she and Victor had been neighbors since childhood. Then there were rumors that Victor had once written a love letter to Luna. High school academic life was boring. A group of teenagers in their dreamy age were even more curious about such things, especially when the rumor's protagonists were good students with beautiful appearances. However, this rumor was quickly clarified by those involved. Victor still insisted it was just a thank you letter, thanking Luna and her family for helping him during difficult times. Later I learned that Victor's father, a gambling addict, had almost beaten his mother to death when he wasn't home. It was Luna's family who stopped it in time. Except for me, who had long memorized the letter's content, others believed Victor's explanation. This kid had it so tough. Lucas came to find me, unable to help muttering, but why did he rush to clarify like that? He even exposed his own wounds. Baseless rumors like this would disappear after a while anyway. No one would pay much attention. I also found it a bit strange. Maybe he's worried Luna would be hurt. I guessed. After all, there were many girls in school who secretly liked Victor. The relationship between Victor and me maintained surface balance until the school sports day. Both Victor and Lucas were competing in the 3,000-m run. Only then did I remember that Victor's physical condition was always very good. The only thing I didn't expect was that he could beat Lucas and win first place. I had a bottle of water ready in my hand, originally intending to give it to Lucas. But unexpectedly, he didn't even look and actively went toward Nancy. Fine then. I laughed, about to stand up and leave when a shadow blocked my way. A voice carrying heavy breathing rang out. I didn't bring water. Can I borrow this bottle? Victor's voice was still cold, but seemed to have a bit more vague expectation than before. I hesitated slightly. During my hesitation, the water bottle in my hand was already taken by him. His dry lips were moistened by the water, his pale face gradually turning pink. At this moment, Victor was unbelievably handsome, staring at me without blinking. I could even sense quite a few gazes around secretly observing us. It's just water. I maintained composure and smiled. Today the athletes are most important. Victor's gaze briefly changed, but before he could say anything, I was called away by another volunteer to help. While working, a girl suddenly spoke up. Actually, I think Luna Stevens and Victor are really well matched. Victor is the champion of the running competition, and Luna is the captain of the school's cheerleading team. Both were very outstanding today. When saying this, she deliberately looked at me several times. They're childhood sweethearts who've helped each other for so many years. Thinking about it is really romantic. Classmate Parker, don't you think so? I continued organizing equipment without looking up. I also think they're well matched. The girl choked on her words but still continued pressing. Although Victor denied that rumor, I still really want to ship them together. Classmate Parker, will you help too? Sure. I hugged the organized box, showing a sincere smile. I also really want that to be true. Balls scattered everywhere from the box. The equipment room door was closed, and the surroundings suddenly became dark. My heart skipped a beat. Just as I was about to shout for help, a hand covered my mouth. A familiar scent immediately hit my nose. I froze, gradually having a suspicion in my heart, but felt it was hard to believe. Until that person lowered their head, burying their face in my neck, their voice so steady it revealed no emotion. You also think Luna Stevens and Victor are well matched. You even want to help them get together. Word by word, but growing colder. The unease in my heart grew larger. I tried to push Victor's hand away, making uncomfortable sounds. Finally he let go. I breathed in fresh air, about to say something when I met Victor's burning red eyes. Eyes so red as if they would shed tears of blood the next second. He gripped my hand tightly, his expression stubborn, his voice as if full of resentment. But Emma, we are clearly married. Who do you want to push me to? Married. Had Victor's dream extended to later? I thought, a bit unable to keep up. But my silence fell into Victor's eyes as another sign that I didn't want to say another word to him. His fingers gripped even tighter, but from trying to control himself, they turned pale. I rarely saw Victor this angry. Although in my impression, his emotions were always very calm. I came to my senses, frowning uncomfortably. You're hurting me. Victor immediately loosened his grip reflexively, but didn't dare let go completely, just holding lightly so I couldn't leave. Just a dream. I decided not to pay attention to him, my voice full of resignation. We're not married. Things in dreams can't be taken as real. Victor froze, his voice hoarse. Just a dream. That's right. I stepped back several steps to create distance, my tone firm. Dreams and reality are completely opposite. You said before that in the dream I clung to you and wouldn't let go. Look, am I bothering you now? I didn't know how much Victor had dreamed, but currently I didn't want to walk the old path of my previous life. Victor still looked at me in a daze, his expression showing rare confusion. I took the opportunity to leave the equipment room, but suddenly heard Victor's almost desperate voice from behind. You've also been reborn, haven't you, Emma? You still hate me, don't you? The two, don't yous, made me freeze in place. But hate? Why would I hate Victor? I thought for a long time but still didn't understand. In my previous life, Victor was a good husband. Although I ultimately died to save him, that was my choice, no one could be blamed. If there was anything, perhaps I was just angry at Victor for hiding the truth about the love letter from me. But that wasn't hate. I wondered, then asked directly. I think you said something wrong. Victor suddenly laughed. He walked toward me, skillfully hugged me, then gently rubbed his cheek against my face, his voice soft like a sigh. Emma, I really miss you so much. But the arms around me trembled, trembling even more than when he held me during that car accident. Victor rarely said emotional words to me. I was used to it. But when he said, I really miss you so much, a sour feeling suddenly welled up in my heart. That feeling came unexpectedly, yet as if long prepared. I had waited for these words too long. So long that when I heard them, my first reaction wasn't joy but wanting to escape. Victor. I tried to stay calm but my voice still trembled. We're not married. We never will be in the future either. I could feel Victor's body suddenly stiffen, his arms tightening as if wanting to engrave me into his bones. So I continued, I also don't want any relationship with you anymore. Liking you is really too tiring. I don't want to continue like this anymore. Always waiting, never receiving adequate reciprocation. Even in the end, I realized it was all just a misunderstanding from beginning to end, just my one-sided feelings. My vision gradually became blurry. I tried to swallow back the burning sensation in my throat. The feelings between us were never balanced. I don't want to experience that pain again. The arms that had been holding me tightly gradually became gentle pats on my back, as if soothing a child. Victor raised his hand to stroke my hair, sighing softly. But I don't want to and can't accept there being no connection between us anymore. If liking me is too tiring, then let me like you. If you feel our feelings aren't balanced, then give me a chance to prove it again. If you don't want to experience that pain again, let me bear it for you. But Emma, he lowered his head to kiss my forehead lightly. My wife has only ever been you. Now every sentence had a response. Perhaps to prove what he said in the equipment room, Victor and I began meeting more often. This time everything was reversed. He always appeared quietly, but each time made me notice him, like warm water gradually seeping into my life. I also didn't know what he had said to my father. I just knew my father was increasingly satisfied with Victor, and before long he could freely enter and exit our villa. I always knew he was very talented, especially when he used his talent to please others. Even Lucas, who usually didn't get along with him, once said something good about Victor in front of me. This change made me feel inexplicably panicked and even very uncomfortable. Victor perhaps realized this very quickly. Am I being too hasty? He suddenly asked after a tutoring session, his tone careful. Emma, don't you like it? I lowered my head without answering. Only when Victor was about to leave the study did I suddenly call him back. Currently my grades are in the middle range of the class, so today will be the last session. From now on you don't need to come help me review anymore. His fingers gripping the door handle slowly tightened. Victor nodded. Understand. If Emma doesn't like it, I won't do it anymore. After that, he really convinced my father. From then on, he didn't come tutor me anymore. But more photos appeared in our phone conversations. Sometimes it was a quote from a book, sometimes a difficult math problem, or sometimes a newly bloomed flower in some corner of school. I suddenly realized this was Victor learning from what I used to do before. His life was very boring. The photos he took weren't as beautiful as Emma's, he said apologetically. Perhaps I've disappointed you. I choked up, not knowing what I was feeling anymore. Finally I just threw my phone aside in frustration and continued burying my head in studying. Fortunately, my efforts were finally rewarded. In the final exam, my ranking entered the top 3 of the class. The homeroom teacher even happily called my father, assuring that if I maintained this performance, getting into a good university wouldn't be a problem. That day at dinner, my father was rarely in such a good mood. He actively asked me, "Your birthday is coming up. What gift do you want?" My parents married for business reasons without deep feelings, so he didn't really care about or love me, his biological child. After my mother passed away, he focused all his attention on his career. When I was young, I didn't understand this. Seeing other classmates misbehave and attract their parents' attention, I learned to do the same, refusing to study properly. But in reality, the person who came to clean up after me was always just my father's secretary. Later I didn't bother studying well either, until I liked Victor. His sudden concern surprised me, but I couldn't help but feel a bit of hope rise in my heart. My birthday fell on New Year's Eve, so I thought for a moment, then asked, "Can Dad come home to have dinner with me that day?" In my memory, the number of times my father was with me during New Year could be counted on one hand. He agreed immediately without thinking. I was very happy, but my father broke his promise. That New Year's Eve, I had prepared for a long time. I wiped my mother's photo over and over, finally carefully placing it in the most visible spot. I couldn't cook, so I could only clumsily learn from recipes to make the dishes my father liked most and wrap dumplings. By dinner time, I specifically told others to leave early so I could wait alone in the villa. But I waited for a long time, until the food had to be reheated many times, and still didn't see my father return. Instead, I only received a photo. In the photo, my father was letting a little boy ride on his shoulders. His usually stern face was now full of gentle smiles. On the dining table behind them were many dishes. In one corner of the photo, you could clearly see a family portrait hanging on the wall. Who took this photo didn't need to be said. I quietly looked at that photo, then stood up and dumped all the food into the trash. Actually, I had known about him having a new family from my previous life, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. I especially didn't expect that even after making a promise, he would once again abandon me. Outside it began to rain heavily. I sat on the sofa, flipping through my phone aimlessly with nothing to do. Until the doorbell rang. It was Victor. Outside the rain was quite heavy, his black hair soaked through, sticking to both sides of his face. Seeing me looking at him blankly without speaking, Victor sighed helplessly. "At this time, shouldn't you invite me in?" I moved aside. When I turned back, I saw a small exquisite cake on the table. I didn't know how Victor had brought it. Clearly his body was soaking wet, but the cake remained perfectly intact without any damage. Because I had to find a cake shop to make a new one, I arrived a bit late, he explained softly. And also, happy birthday. Actually, I had received quite a few birthday wishes, but Victor was the first person to stand in front of me and sing happy birthday. For the first time, I realized that the always perfect Victor in my eyes actually sang terribly. He coughed uncomfortably, scratched his nose, then asked me want to try a piece. I nodded. The familiar sweet taste made me pause, suddenly realizing something. All my previous birthday cakes were made by you, Victor answered softly. He didn't explain much, just glanced at the empty dining table, then reminded me not to eat too much cake before entering the kitchen. Before long, the sound of pots and pans clanging came from the kitchen. I glanced over, then withdrew my gaze, looking blankly at the cake. I liked sweets but had quite picky taste. Only the birthday cakes Victor brought on my birthdays were something I could eat a bit more of. I had even praised in front of him that the baker's skills improved every year. But I didn't expect they were made by him. Victor definitely didn't like me, but would he put effort into making cakes for a wife he didn't like? I suddenly felt uncertain. While lost in thought, the aroma of food wafted over. Victor's cooking skills were always excellent. In my previous life, I really liked the dishes he cooked. So I quietly picked up my chopsticks. The rain grew heavier. I couldn't chase someone away in such circumstances. Finally, I stiffly told him to sleep in the guest room. Perhaps the tense nerve in me finally snapped after enduring for so long. In the middle of the night, I suddenly developed a high fever. In my haze, I vaguely sensed someone continuously using a towel to bring down my fever. That person also coaxed me to take medicine. Perhaps I was really burning up to confusion. All night I dreamed of many things, dreamed of my mother, dreamed of things from my previous life, and dreamed of that car accident. The fear and panic almost immediately pulled me into the abyss. But the next second, someone seemed to be gripping my hand tightly, refusing to let go. That person called me. Emma, don't be afraid. This sentence seemed like I had heard it many times before. Victor had taken care of me all night. When I woke up, he tried to show a comforting smile, though not very practiced. Are you hungry? I nodded, unable to help thinking his smile was really ugly. He brought me a bowl of porridge that had been warmed. I ate in silence. When Victor was about to leave with the bowl, I suddenly called him, Victor. I've remembered everything. His body stiffened in that moment. I even suspected he didn't dare turn back to face me. He was silent, so I continued on my own. I remember why I always argued with you during that time. Because Victor always hid from me that the love letter wasn't written by you. Luna had someone forge your handwriting, then secretly put it in your backpack. She planned to wait until someone discovered it, then lead things in her direction. With childhood's sweetheart feelings and past favors, she thought as long as she asked Victor, you wouldn't expose the truth. By then, she could also make me, who always clung to you, give up. But no one expected that letter would end up in my hands. Yet Victor didn't tell me anything, even hiding helping Luna from me. I was very angry, so I argued with you. But why didn't you tell me? I still couldn't understand, a bit confused. When I asked you about that love letter, why didn't you explain clearly? Clearly, if you had just explained, I would have given up. At that time we weren't married yet. You could still go find Luna. I had asked Victor this question before, but he still refused to say. This time his silence lasted even longer. Right when I thought he wouldn't answer anymore, his hoarse voice cut me off. At that time, you had already started giving up on liking me, hadn't you? Victor turned back, quietly looking at me. He slightly curled his lips in a smile. I was never as good as you imagined. I'm selfish, dark-hearted, using any means to achieve my goals. I've never even known how to love someone. The only thing I could do was use every method to keep you by my side. I knew very clearly that you were already very tired then. I also guessed that it was the misunderstanding from that love letter that made you continue persisting. Victor paused, his voice becoming increasingly difficult. But I still wanted to keep you by my side. I wanted you to continue liking me. His voice trembled, carrying something like crying. This was something I didn't expect. But hearing Victor say these words, I discovered there weren't any overly strong emotions in my heart. It was like a calm, So that's how it was. I pulled at the corner of my mouth mockingly. Not knowing how to communicate in love will lead to breakup sooner or later. Victor made an sound. So I'm correcting it. Every time you happily shared with me, but every time I responded, you felt like I was being perfunctory. It wasn't perfunctory. I carefully thought about every word. I just didn't know how to respond. I was afraid saying the wrong thing would make you unhappy. In my memory, Victor did indeed have a few times when he spoke more than usual, but because he was too straightforward, it made me very angry. Victor, I looked up at him, asking softly, do you like me like? He sat down beside me, his pure black eyes staring at me unblinkingly, then unconsciously laughed and said softly, more precisely, I love you. I shook my head, but your liking never made me feel secure. Then I'll change. Victor carefully gripped my hand. Didn't I already say? This time let me love you, Emma. I've learned how to love someone. That day I didn't do it on purpose, he suddenly said. When mentioning this, his voice became low again. I just forgot to react for a moment. This couldn't blame Victor, because he had once witnessed his mother being hit by a car and not surviving. The psychological trauma had never left him. At that time I always thought you were still alive. Victor took my hand, gently placed it on his face, then rubbed it slightly. You get jealous very easily. If you saw another woman beside me, you would definitely appear angrily to scold me. I always thought maybe the next second you would suddenly appear from somewhere. This I also remembered. After I had just passed away, Victor locked himself in his room day and night. He was so sick he piled all my things on the bed, then curled up in that small nest, continuously calling my name. With hazy eyes, he looked toward the door again and again, as if waiting for me to walk through at any moment. Spirits have one inconvenience: they forget very easily. But fortunately, I've now remembered everything. So I asked Victor, I told you to take care of yourself. Why did you attempt suicide during that month? Victor had attempted suicide many times, taking pills, cutting wrists, even submerging himself in a bathtub full of water. But all were unsuccessful. Victor was stunned. Perhaps he didn't expect me to know about this. Immediately he became flustered like a child who had done wrong. Go on. I saw you. Victor lowered his head, not daring to look at me. When I was about to die, I saw you come looking for me. But I didn't dare die. I wanted to see you one more time. I also didn't dare call you. I was afraid if you knew I could see you, you would be angry and never appear before me again. His voice was soft, carrying frustration. Just wanting to see you one more time. So I decided to put myself near death, but still carefully controlled not to die. No wonder many times I suspected Victor might have seen me. But at that time I was only busy scolding him, not paying much attention. I was momentarily speechless, my vision gradually becoming misty. Victor, I said angrily through laughter, deciding to tell him the truth. After I died, I followed you as a spirit for 2 months. I thought he would be astonished, afraid, or perhaps angry. But Victor suddenly became panicked. At that time I looked terrible. Emma saw it too. Victor immediately fell into silence. When the earthquake happened, I saw you rush toward Luna. I said gently. That was the last scene I saw before being reborn. I didn't rush toward her. But I didn't expect Victor to give an unexpected answer. He said awkwardly. At that time I saw you standing next to Luna. I was stunned. At that time I was indeed standing next to Luna, and Victor had called Emma. The memories suddenly became clear. I suddenly felt it was funny. Victor and I seemed to have some fate, but not that much. He still gripped my hand tightly, as if worried I would disappear the next second. He continuously confirmed my presence again and again. I quietly looked at Victor, then suddenly spoke. I want to test into a good university. This time not for Victor but for myself. I want to try living a different life. Maybe this time won't have you in that life. Victor gripped my hand tightly, his body stiffening. But gradually he relaxed. He smiled, but his eyes gradually reddened, his voice soft but full of determination. As long as it's what Emma wants, I can accept it all. Early September, I stood before the university gates, listening to seniors introduce the school. This time there were no surprises. I had tested into the school I dreamed of. Lucas did a bit worse but ended up in the same city as Nancy. Junior, do you know that guy? He seems to have been looking at you the whole time. Oh my God, he's so handsome. Wait, he's walking toward us. The senior beside me exclaimed. I turned back, just happening to meet Victor's focused gaze. Emma. Finally, he stopped in front of me. Victor actively took my suitcase, his eyes curving slightly. I've come to find you. You might have to wait in line. I also smiled, my eyes full of confidence. I still have to pursue my dreams first. The regrets from my previous life now had a chance to make up for. And I also realized that before loving someone. Okay. Victor nodded, in his pure black eyes only my small reflection remained. He said softly but extremely seriously, as long as it's what Emma likes, I can do it all. This time, let me love you. The story ends here. Please give Second Sunrise Stories a channel subscription and hit like if you enjoyed this story. Thank you very much.